Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to start actually creating the graph of sine and cosine. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to graph, depending on what the angle is, what is your corresponding ratio with that specific trig function. So recall that for sine on a unit circle is just the y value. So over here we got the unit circle, and we're just going to focus on the half pi's interval. So when I go through and I look at this, sine at negative pi is 0. So I go 0. At negative pi over 2, we're at negative 1. For 0, we get 0. For a half a pi, we're at 1. For pi, we're at 0. And if you start noticing, there's a pattern. 0, 1, so on. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to plot these points. So when we plot the points, when we graph sine, so sine at negative pi is 0, sine at negative pi over 2 is negative 1, sine of 0 is 0, sine of pi over 2, 1, sine of pi, 0. So notice that every half pi, it looks like it's keeping this pattern going all the way through. And this is what we call a sine wave. So for sine, the graph actually does, and it's not zigzaggy. A lot of people want to make it zigzaggy like so. That's not really the case. What it's actually doing is it's curved, because remember you're plotting these points on the circle, and as you go around the circle you have a curve to it. So when I graph this, you're going to have a curve going like so. So almost how it kind of creates that circle, that half circle look. So there is our graph for sine. Now for cosine, same thing happens except you're dealing with the x values. So what I would do is, as I'm go through my angles, I'm only looking at the x values when I'm placing these down. So cosine of negative pi would be negative 1, and then 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1, 0. And so when we plot these points, we're at negative 1, 0 at half pi. At 0, we're at 1. Pi over 2, we're at 0. Pi, we're at negative 1. 3 pi over 2, we're back at 0. 2 pi, we're back at 1. And then 5 pi over 2. So cosine looks something kind of like this. Now you'll notice that the graphs are pretty much the same except shifts of each other. If I get the sine graph and shift it to the left a half a pi, well, you get the cosine graph. Now to get from sine to cosine, we'll have to flip it and shift it around as well, but they're basically just transformations of each other.